it's Dan, Lieutenant Dan Spawn again, here in Huntsville, Alabama. I've been asked to do a video on striker fire versus hammer fire. We'll start out with a little bit of a history, I guess. The first firearms that were invented, the basic technology was hammer fire. For example, like this revolver here. The very first ones in the 1800s that were common to individuals were hammer fire. Striker fire came along later on, and I might cause an argument here, but Glock did not invent striker fire. I've had individuals tell me, well, Glock invented striker fire and blah, 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 but they did not. Actually, John Browning invented striker fire back in I believe it was 1910. John Browning invented striker fire. Now, I've read things that said that way back in 1875, there was an individual and I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, but there was someone in 1875 that developed a firearm that used a striker fire principle. But John Browning in 1910 invented striker fire. Glock, I think the reason that so many individuals think that Glock invented striker fire was because in the 1980s, Glock came out with the Glock 17 striker fire, and they weren't real popular firearms striker fire until that point. Glock popularized striker fire. That's where I think a lot of individuals say, well, Glock invented striker fire. So that's the little history lesson, and now we're going to talk about striker fire versus hammer fire. Now, I've said this before in other videos, this phrase, it's your own personal flavor. Whatever you like is what you need to carry. Some individuals are going to swear by hammer fire. I like hammer fire. Some individuals are going to say, no, I don't want hammer fire, I want striker fire all the time. So it's just going to be your personal flavor. It's a very simple comparison, so it's not going to take very long. This is going to be a short video. Hammer fire is just like I showed a minute ago. This is an example of hammer fire. A revolver, you have a hammer right here. The hammer is pulled back either by you or by the firearm. And right here inside the receiver is a firing pin. The technology is that when the hammer falls with great force, it pushes the firing pin forward, striking the primer on the round, discharging the firearm. So this is an example of hammer fire in a revolver. In a semi-automatic firearm, the 1911 would be a good example. Again, you have a hammer right here. The hammer is pulled back, and in this situation, it's pulled back every time you pull the trigger. The slide goes to the rear, leaves the hammer to the rear, cocked. In this situation, you have a firing pin right here in the top portion of the slide. If you took the slide off to clean it, in the bottom of the slide is where your housing is for your spring and for your firing pin. So in this situation, when the firearm is fired and the hammer comes down, it releases it, knocks the firing pin forward, striking the primer and discharging the firearm, setting it down range. I'm sorry. This is a good example, the Glock 19 that I have here, of a striker fire firearm. It's not a hammer. As you can see, there's no external hammer that you can see, and there's no hammer inside. On a striker fire, the way the technology works is everything is built into here. So when you, let me drop this. When you charge the firearm, it's pulling a spring to the rear that's holding the firing pin. When you depress the trigger, it's going to allow that spring to push the firing pin forward, hit the primer, and discharge the firearm. Now, there's a lot more involved in what I just explained, but that is basically the difference between a striker fire and a hammer fire. Now, I'll leave you with this. You can also have other types of hammer fire and striker fire very quickly. A revolver like this can be hammerless, but it's still a hammer fire. A hammer fire like this can not have a hammer. It'll be internal and still be hammer fire. I probably should have brought an example out, but a good example would be this right here. You do not see the hammer because the hammer is internal. That is really it. That's as simple as it is. If you have any questions or if you have comments, leave them in the bottom if you would. Share, like, and subscribe. If you have a video that you'd like us to do a video on, put them down in the comments and we will try to do a video on it. Thanks for joining us. Come by and see us here at Lieutenant Dan's Pond in Huntsville, Alabama.